Where's all this? All right. I think without further ado, we can start this round. Send from the Prime Minister here.
Yeah. Is my voice audible?
Yep, you're audible.
Okay. If you guys have any POI, you can just unmute. Starting my timer. Okay, starting my timer. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Three models on the mitigating factor. Firstly, the manifestation of the mitigating factor. We say that the manifestation of the mitigating factor will be in the form of such as, for example, the first is the reduction in the duration of your prison time, or the reduction in the amount of the economic fine that you must pay. Secondly, about the application of the mitigating factor. We say that this mitigating factor will be valid to be applied of when you are in court for things such as, for example, property damage, or for example, you harass cop, or for example, you even doing things, for example, you doing serious injury or even minor injury, or even to the degree of murder that happened in the riot, right? We will be taking those application under OG, right? Thirdly, about the validity of the verdict, we say that even though it is the option to do this mitigating factor still exists in the court, we say that because we say that the court will still be judged with a valid judge that has been educated and are able to make rational decision, right? So they are going to be the actor that decide whether or not this mitigating factor will be applied or not, and if it is applied, to what degree will it be applied? To what degree will it be applied, and to what degree the reduction will be set, right? It will be decided by the judge. Okay, but so other opening government will try to do two things. Like firstly, we'll try to prove to you why actually this politician and public statement are the thing that can be counted as the valid mitigating factor. Secondly, we'll also talk about de-radicalization. Itu the first argument of opening government, the validity of a mitigating factor as in the form of politicians' public inflammatory statement. We say that first of all, the radicalism is inherently outside of the victim control, right? Why? Firstly, we need to take a look at the characterization of these victims, that is the rioters itself, the people that are incited to the riot, the people that are normally someone who is rational, and we need to take a look about their characterization, right? Firstly, these writers often come from unprivileged background, right? That's what pushes them to a bordering far right or far left movement, right? Because we think that because they comes from this specific unprivileged background that affects their economics and education level, it makes them unable to access things. For example, the economic and education bottleneck make them unable to access moderate platform to voice out their opinion, and at the same time be validly be heard. Like they cannot, for example, voice out their opinions or their grievances to their local senators, because voicing out to your local senators requires you to have a degree of education that these people does not have. Or they also cannot do things. For example, they cannot voice out their opinions on social media, on Twitter, or in other platform validly and be heard. Because I think that the education bottleneck that these people that have will make the opinions that they are trying to give out because something that is heavily scrutinized into social media, right? So what does this characteristic imply? This implies that there are these hidden grievances that is steering inside the individual, right? That these individuals cannot express immoderately, and these individuals have in themselves, right? Normally, these people does not have to act upon that hidden grievances, right? But I think that there are some things that will trigger them to the point of irrationality, right? There is the politician inflammatory statement, right? We need to characterize also how these kinds of writers see the politician, right? They see the politicians as the savior figure, the savior of the lower middle class, the savior of the lower class people. Like how, for example, the people in Detroit see Donald Trump as the savior of their economy, right? I think that these kinds of things that makes them have this kinds of irrational viewpoint towards the politicians, because the politician promised them a lot of things, economic reparation, more welfare for them. And I think that this kind of thing will make this writer see that this kind of figure as someone that they must be idolized, that someone that can bring betterment for them, and they must do what these kinds of politicians try to tell you, so they can achieve what their goals, to better their condition, right? So it proves to you that these politicians are being held on a higher pedestal by these kinds of writers, right? And this is problematic, right? Because it pushes them to irrationality, right? This can be seen, just for example, like in the case of religious indoctrination, right? When you are like how you can see that there are the similarity between this, how there was these politicians and the cult leader, like, or other things, like you can see the similarity between this case and also when you get a military order from your higher ups, right? Because they put this kind of figure on a higher pedestal, and their command is seen as something that can be bring them to betterment, right? So I think that not only that, because I think that also because these kinds of politicians are making this statement in the most critical times, in the times, just for example, in the COVID times, or just for example in other more time where there are very severe economic stress, like what happened in the Capitol Riot. It incited them to the point of irrationality, right? So I think that because the characterization of the riot plus the characterization of the politician plus the economic stress of the condition of the time needs to be something that we can see as a mitigating factor, and we say that it's a valid mitigating factor. CEO. Oh.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So do you think that terrorists should be given mitigating factors in sentence?
Yes, because I think that terrorists terrorists that is influenced by religious indoctrination plays on the same degree of how we can of how this plays out, right? Because they put their leader on the higher pedestal, and how it comes it comes, the indoctrination comes in a very specific stress of time, and I think that's what makes it can be also can be count as a mitigating factor, right? Okay, so moving on to the second argument about the radicalization. We'll respond to the case of the opposition that will say that, oh, this will perpetuate the radicalization because it creates confirmation bias, so we should not make them as a mitigating factor. Firstly, we say that this will happen because firstly, punishment will still exist. These people that do this crime, these people that do this property damage, even these people that do the murder, for example, are still going to be punished by the judge, right? They are still going to be experience the consequences of their action, but only to a reduced degree, and they are going to be aware that the sentence that they are serving have already been reduced because they are being incited by politicians comment, right? I think that this will prove to you that the consequences will still be delivered, and secondly, they have the awareness that the state is trying to do something for them. Like, this is why the second layer come in, right? The second layer is that I think that under government you will get a better de-radicalization, right? Because the characterization of this actor is that their hidden grievances make them inherently see the state as the actor that is not supporting them, right? They see that the actor, the state is not the actor that is tailored for them, right? I think that when we give them the awareness that even though they are serving the sentence are being reduced by the state because they are influenced by the politician command, it will make them see the state in a better new light. Right? So I think the radicalization happens in OG, go to be OG.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for that speech. Sorry. Now let's call upon the opening opposition. LO, hit here.
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
I want to check if my audio is choppy. Is it choppy now?
Your video
Or
looks
is
a bit choppy though in my side.
okay? Turning off my camera.
Yeah, it's better in my side.
POI through chat, please. Probably taking from CD. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. So in opening opposition, we're going to cover two broad areas in this debate. The first one is the principle why these inflammatory public statements by politicians should not be used as a parameter of this individual to be deserved to be given mitigating factor. And the second thing is about societal evaluation. So what constitutes as parameter of mitigating factor? I think there are two broad parameters. The first one is that you have no chance to opt out from doing the crimes because it's an absolute necessity. For example, poverty, which is not the case for these individuals because it is mostly done by the military, which get a lot of compensation by the government, by the middle to upper class that also takes part in this discussion and killing a lot of people in this Capitol Riot. And although there are some people that are in the state of poverty when they do this, but it's just some of them. A lot of people go in the state of poverty. They are also part of Republican constituents, but they don't choose to do this Capitol Riot. It means that it's only some degree of causation. The second parameter is the belief that you do this action because of irrational calculus. But even in the second parameter, it is still a fuzzy parameter because people below the age of 18 right now in status quo are given this mitigating factor, but terrorist is not given. I don't think that opening government has the political capital to say, yeah, we are going to give mitigating factor to terrorists, because that's not what the status quo is, right? They cannot just simply revamp the whole constitution and what status quo looks like just because it's favorable to their stance. So I don't think that's the case in the side of opening government. So I'm going to explain what Capitol Riots people have done and why the burden of proof in the side of government that they need to answer is why these Capitol Riots perpetrators should be given the guarantee of privilege of getting mitigating factor more than ruthless terrorists. But even in these two variables I'm going to provide to you, these Capitol Riot perpetrators are not fulfilling the parameters because of 5 reasons. The first reason is because there is competing media influence from both left and right-wing parties and right-wing medias that allow people to get full information of the consequences of the actions that they do. Sure, there is going to be probably echo chamber that CG probably will bring, but I'm going to create 3 preemptive response on echo chamber. Number 1, with new rise of social media and their algorithm, there is always chance for you to be penetrated with left ideas if you are right-wing, because that's the way that social media companies can provide you with more information, advertise you with more products, and keep you engaged in the discussion. Number 2, even Fox News right now already allowed left-wing political pundits to be part of the discussion, because that's how they make the debate in the late night show becomes more interesting. But number 3, I think most media company right now from left and right have tried to diversify their political opinions. So they get to become more centrist that allow more left wing to enter, because that's how they enlarge the customer bases to get more profit. This shows to you that echo chamber doesn't show a lot of influence because it's already mitigated right now. The second reason is because there is communities influence. The actual fact is America is a melting pot. In red states, even if like most of them are conservative, but there are still influence from the African American from your workplace that you also talk to, from the neighborhood, a lot of people that have different competing political opinions that also give their ideas to you, or even your children that is already influenced by demographic transition in their political opinion that give you counterbalance. So you should listen to them. To the fact that they still do it, it means that they are indeed evil. Number 3, there is still political parties competition. It doesn't mean that you need to get like full ideas from Democratic Party. But the fact that you can see there is opposition in the ballot boxes, the fact that you go to gas station and see Democratic pamphlet, it means some exposure of media already reached to you. Number 4, the ability for you to actually move out from the state if you are living in conservative household. There is no transmigration limitation in US, so you should have done something better. But number 5, just assume that all of this echo chamber does exist, but it doesn't negate the fact that you should not get mitigating factor because you should still do better. The fact that you are allowed to vote in the very first place, what makes government to think, so this is the logic, what makes the government think that these people are considered to be informed and mature enough to vote in the election, but not informed and mature enough to take full consequences for their Capitol Riots action? Why the double standard, right? Especially if you already get to be able to vote, you get the civic duty to do your job as a citizen to research what's the best for your nation. So this civic duty makes you should know and you should do better. The fact that you didn't do better, you deserve to be jailed with your full consequences. Taking CG, yes, POI.
How will politicians who made inflammatory, brash, and offensive remarks be held accountable on OO?
So in opening opposition, we don't really prosecute the politicians. We prosecute the actual individuals that do harms, physical harms in this action. But even for politicians, we're going to explain in my second speaker, how do we create better check and balance for them? So how do we create better evaluation, societal evaluation and deterrence effect for societies? That's my second argument. I think the most important thing is just to create deterrence effect to prevent future casualties, because with this political climate, things that are injuring people like this will happen again in the future. There is a potential and tendency that will happen. So how do we prevent that? Is when we create full consequences for the citizens. If you do this, you will get the full brand of your action. So in the side of government, you will create moral hazard. People will think, yeah, I'm going to be reduced in terms of my sentence. So if I do this again, I'll get somehow influence again, and I can do more harms again in the future. They cannot say that. They still take the consequences. So there is still some deterrence effect, because they are the one that mentioned that the influence is that strong. It means the reduction of that sentence also need to be that strong and need to be that maximum. Otherwise, they are contradicting themselves. So we're preventing moral hazard. But number two, we create better media evaluation, because even when we assume that echo chamber does exist because of Facebook, because of Cambridge Analytica, because how the media algorithm is to some extent echo chambering, then what we need to have is progressive individuals pushing the government to say that I don't want to have like my parents getting jailed for this action that is caused by these inflammatory actions. So I want to push for Facebook, push for the senators to regulate more media, to prevent fake information, to prevent hoaxes to be published in the internet. And that's how I can prevent my family from getting jailed. So we have costs for people. We make people demand the government. Thank you.
Thank you, LO. Calling upon DPM. Here.
By the way, before that, I want to ask if another team is POIing the speaker, does the stopwatch stop or not? Should the stopwatch stop or not?
I'm not sure. Maybe LO dia bisa jawab.
Oh. No, because tadi instance-nya adalah waktu leader of the opposition di POI, stopwatch itu di stop kan. I don't know if that's like the usual thing, because during the POI the time should just go on normally kan ya.
Oh iya, right.
Oh,
Tadi
okay.
di pause ya. Oke, kalau gitu ntar nggak usah di pause ya. Kalau for the timer kalau ada POI. Just reminding. Thank you, Kak Santo. Yaudah, we can continue DPM here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, give me 1 second. Mau minum.
Is it just me atau nge-freeze?
Yeah, it's also frozen on my end.
Oji. DPM-nya disconnected. Okay, we're gonna wait for DPM.
Tes. Sorry, tadi I was kicked out. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, so sorry. Okay. Hi everyone. Kevin here. Him, POI to the chat. I'll be taking one on the 5th minute. I think I'll prioritize from CO, but there's no POI. I'll take one from opening opposition. So yeah, just be just be sabar apa bahasa Inggrisnya? Patient. Okay. Wait. Moving on my docs. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. My arguments are going to clash with opening opposition, right? I'll prove as to why, number one, why being influenced is a parameter of mitigating factor. Second, I'll talk about the impact of mitigating factor engaging to their case about society, check and balance, and whatnot. But before moving on, right, just a few refutations against opening opposition, right? Their parameter of mitigating factor is about no ability to opt out. This is going to clash later on to my explanation. Second, but I'd just like to respond to their case about how terrorist is not given in status quo. I think that clarification that we need to make is that opening government principally agrees that it's okay to be mitigating factor. But even if that's not the case, I think that to an extent, there's engaging to their case. I think that even if that this is a different thing, I think that there's a calculated reason as to why, right? That these people understand that the degree of riots and terrorism are kind of different, right? The delta then becomes as to how that these kinds of riots that's being put out by the politicians is inherently an internal problem that's being caused in the country, right? It's a certain failure that's been done by the country because it's being perpetuated, narratives are being perpetuated by actual state officials who actually put out these kinds of narratives towards those people on the ground as to how that they need to go and storm the White House and whatnot. So I think the degree or difference is that there's a level of the hand that's put by the state in these kinds of actions are bigger that exist in opposition. I think that answers their POI to begin with. First class, is it a fair mitigating factor, right? I think that to an extent, mitigating factor means that the people should be fully irrational to begin with. Opposition stated that these people, for example, have an ability to opt out because of field distance. That's really bad the case, right? I think if they say that they're able to opt out, I don't think that's the case. Two reasons for this. Number one, I think that the victims of radicalization and whatnot live in a very biased neighborhood. Maybe they live on a very conservative neighborhood, for example, right? I disagree with the fact that Zudi state that you're still going to interact with those people that are black when you start they're like African Americans also on the work, for example, right? Because those interactions most likely are going to be very minimal. It's a professional relationship and whatnot, for example. And that to an extent, more likely they will have more trust on the neighborhood that they live in, which most likely is also going to be conservative, for example, who's going to indoctrinate them by the people that are around them, right? Saying to them that the beliefs of Republicans are the only one that's right to begin with. And it's more convincing, I think, right? Because it's blood relations. It's the one that's been raising you ever since the past. They're the ones that's been teaching you about the values that you should live by. And it became a part of your identity even until the status quo, for example, right? So it's not the idea. So I think that to an extent, it's not that easy for you to opt out of that area. But number two, engaging to Zudi's argument about social media giving you more of a need to opt out. I don't think that that's the case. I mean, like there's a massive amount of far-right narrative that's spreading, like Jordan Peterson, that uses data and facts to make sure that the words that he's stating is actually right. People like Andrew Tate also, it means that most of the time, these people who are going to be influenced are those that are already, like far-right, right? Most likely they're the one that's engaged to algorithm, like Cambridge Analytica, in which most likely you're going to be radicalized because what you like on Instagram and it's only going to recommend the similar posts that exist on your side of the house, right? Most likely then what this means is that these people do not have the agency of picking what puts and move on the field and whatnot, right? And just engaging to like Zudi's point about how this is advertisement, this is wrong because I don't think advertisement needed that level of change and that level of like left or right ideas conflicting together. I don't think that that could be a good way for them. So the algorithm needs to make sure that you like and want to use their social media. So that's why most likely it's going to keep on doing that way. But engaging their case about how there's like more media, there's going to be like more, even like Fox News are inviting people towards their media and whatnot. So there's going to be discussion. I don't like they take this for granted, right? I don't think that the discussion will be that good and will be that favorable, right? Because I think that to an extent, Fox News does have the incentive to present the debate in a biased way, right? I think most of the time they're going to ridicule the people that come from the very left, their policies, what they're doing, how they're being irrational and whatnot. So I think that these kinds of things are unable to break the echo chamber that people exist on the current status quo to begin with, right? So I think that in conclusion, when my prime minister explained as to how the characterizations of politicians inflammatory is that big, because they're being seen as a messianic figure, for example, because what they're doing is not as simple as asking for accountability for election, right? We think that the context of inflammatory behavior or inflammatory statement that's being built by these kinds of politicians is as huge as saying of Donald Trump, asking the people to bear their arms, to literally go to the White House and taking back America to begin with, right? I think this is important because it's a result of the years of narratives that have been sent by the politicians to begin with, right? That's what's been shaping them to be voters, for example. It's years of massive amounts of radicalization that's being done by the Republican Party, which they need to be held, which they've done in order for them to make sure they're going to win voters. It's not that easy. But then opening opposition comes in and say that no. The fact, even if I have the ability to opt out, for example, you must do better. You must research and do better, right? That's so easy for you to say, and that's very elitist, right? Because not everyone has the time for them to actually do research and do calculation, for example, right? Sometimes these people are those in a working class, like what my prime minister has stated, who has no time because they need to work for their families. They need to make sure that their people are able to opt in and whatnot, right? Because even if we engage to like Zuhdi's point about these people being so evil, so radical, I think that they still get that mitigating point because exactly there's a hand in which the state plays in order to make them this level of radicalized. It's a way for the state to pay back the level of failure. I think that's an engagement in principle level. It's okay for us to put them in the mitigating factor to begin with, right? Before moving on, any POI?
Yeah, I mean, they are perceived to be mature and informed enough to vote, but why they are not mature and informed enough to get full consequence of their action? Why the double standard?
Yeah, because I think to an extent, the fact that they're able to vote, for example, is because of the actual reasoning that it's their basic right as a human being, right? But the fact and difference is that there are other external factors that's going to influence them to begin with. I mean, like the fact that they vote, for example, they're still going to get that level of they're still not sure if it's going to benefit or not. I think that's the impact that you need to impact to on your side of the house, right? But secondly, let's talk about the impacts of mitigating factor, right? I think that they never really rebutted my first speaker's argument about benevolent narrative as to how that we can shift the perception of the state from being that evil and making sure that these people are understanding that most of the time that they're doing the wrong thing, right? But engaging to opposition's argument about society check and balance, I think check and balance still exists, right? Because I think number one, the damage is already being done. I think that to an extent people will spotlight them, will shame them anyway for doing these kinds of action. So there's still a level of society detriment against what they're currently doing. But number two, I think to an extent, even if mitigating factor exists and we're cutting down from them, it's still going to be punishment for them, right? They still have to pay hundreds of dollars, right? Even if the mitigating factor is that much, which is going to be bad for them because exactly then they're still going to spend out money for these people that may be middle class, like what my first speaker has explained. But number two, they're still going to lose valuable time to spend with their families and whatnot. So I think that those impacts are still very much bad, going to exist. And it's a benefit that still exists on opening government. Very proud to propose.
Thank you, LG, for that speech. Calling upon DLO. Here.
Hi, am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. POI, please state it through chat. Wait a second. Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Politicians being mitigating factor doesn't only mean punishment reduction to the rioters, but it also means we recognize politicians as third party that either directly or indirectly involved in the making of these casualties, in provoking the rioters, and also in making the whole casualties inside of the riots itself. This means we can point a finger at them too. This has never been explored by neither OG or OO. So enough talking about whether these people deserve punishment reduction. We're talking about whether or not these politicians also deserve to be blamed, and what are the future consequences of us blaming these politicians as well, besides the rioters. So 2 things in my speech. First, how do the politicians intentionally set the fire for the riot to happen? But second of all, why this is an exclusive way to to create transparency in riot investigation. So how do these politicians intentionally set the fire for riot to happen? 4 things. First, they allow purposely the growth of militant diehard fans by not investigating the hoaxes that becomes the foundation of this community. Politicians in US still don't break Facebook because its algorithm benefits them for election by creating the echo chamber and whatnot. And they purposely don't punish Facebook that harsh, even for the like snippets of videos of hoaxes that they spread between communities and groups, because they feel like it's actually benefiting them. Second of all, they purposely choose provoking wordings in the speeches that can wake up the anger of these militant individuals. Third of all, there's gerrymandering that makes one area to be always blue or always red without any transition to other from red to blue or blue to red whatsoever, by enabling only one party to win one election to another for consecutive years or even decades. But fourthly, they create personal bonds, like selectively inviting these radical militant diehard fans to stage when doing campaigns to town or door-to-door campaigns. They sign their merch. So they intentionally create this personal bond. So it's very easy to inflict their anger in support of the riot, and also so their anger can support the politicians whenever they need to. This response comes better than OG, because OG simply defend that radicalization exists. But PG, we prove you the formation of such radical community and why politicians purposely made this community to exist in the first place. But even if you don't buy this, I think we should assume that the guilt is symmetrical between rioters and also politicians. Not assume that both of them are like have their own level of guilt. So the tipping point is which one can create first better political climate in the future. So which one that should be prosecuted and which one should not. So this political climate will be created better in the future. Second of all, how to reduce the amplification of this radical movement. And lastly, the transparency of riot investigation. So move on to my second point. Why this is an exclusive way to create transparency in riot investigation? I think both things in opening already agreed that this radical idealization of politicians is harmful, right? So I'm going to extend it. In many riots, people claim they act based on command of no one, despite there's possibility of Trump remarks that direct them implicitly that way, right? That's why when being interrogated, many of the 6th January rioters say that, I do this for because of my own initiative, that I do this not because Trump makes me to do so. I do this to defend him, and this is my own self-initiated action. The way they want to be martyred for these politicians that they are a diehard fans of is because they're promised there will be no legal repercussions. For example, 6th January rioters are in the end very surprised that they face legal consequences, because they thought that, this is just a patriotic act that I will not get any legal consequences for. Now, these people who face legal repercussion that cost them financially and politically. For example, they lose jobs. They cannot be elected because now their record is tainted. But third of all, it's also very hard for them to search for another job because of this permanent criminal record. Now they have a need to reduce these opportunity costs from these legal repercussions by providing them immunity. Let's say by providing them possibility of sentence deduction, they will want to talk and be transparent about how their idealist politicians also influence them. Means they'll have the incentive to call them out when testifying in court or being interrogated. This call out will be done collectively, right? Which means it's not just 1 or 2 rioters that will say this, but it's hundreds or even thousands, whoever that actually stormed that Capitol Hill anyway, right? Means the accumulation of this call out will result into, first, politicians being careful because they can see these rioters calling them out in open trial that is aired publicly. When this call out happens, they will lose trust, they will lose their approval rating. Second of all, fans who haven't rioted, but let's say there are also diehard fans who haven't rioted, but probably they wanted to, but they didn't. But still, a diehard fan will be much more skeptical of these politicians because they see their brothers and sisters are now facing legal consequences, and now they're speaking out against these politicians. Mean there's something wrong, right? So that at least will make them much more skeptical about the politicians they try to defend. But third of all, people or gray area people will bash or see these politicians in a more pessimistic view that will also reduce their approval rating. Even though these diehard fans will at the first time feel reluctant to betray them, let's say their loyalty is so damn hard to the point they are feeling very reluctant to whistleblow about their politicians, they will do it eventually, because now there's a tangible and direct personal benefit from calling out their favorite figure compared to being loyal that rewards them nothing, right? Being loyal is only a symbolic action, right? But it rewards them nothing, because now when you literally tell that, oh, my politicians actually made me do this, there will be direct beneficial consequences. What are those beneficial consequences? They get to see their families because of the sentences reduction. They don't get jail. They probably only have to be either like pay fines or whatever. So there is a reduction of opportunity cost that goes directly to them. But how about the victim compensation? So both CEO and O probably will problematize the idea of victim compensation. Now victims can collectively direct their anger to the accused politician, which results into one, they can collectively prosecute the politician. Two, because they're elites, these politicians are elites, they can provide higher financial compensation. Third of all, the rival competitors or politicians who are the rival of these prosecuted politicians, let's say the Democrats, can tap into this issue to boost their vote, right? So there's a certain benefit that you will get as victims. So what have we proved to you? We proved you that we reduce the radical attachment of these rioters to the politicians they support. We ensure victims of riots also get the blame to the right actor and compensated properly. But third, we make sure that the effective investigation becomes transparent, so guilty politicians can be called out. Very proud to propose.
Thank you, MG, for that speech calling upon member of opposition. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, let me set my timer here. PI preference through unmuting yourself. I don't see the chat, sorry. Yeah. Preferred pronouns he, him. I don't care what pronouns actually. Okay. Let me start my speech in 3, 2, 1. What is lacking from the opening debate, even until the closing, is that they are more focusing on debating about what makes this person, what makes these people is actually committing crime, and what makes these is something that is like, you know, unjustified to do if we give mitigation, those kind of things, right? We think that this debate should be based on proposal, which part of this chamber that can actually give something about like in order to enforce justice, right? We think that there is a lack of characterization about rioting in the opening debate, because like they talk about rioting, it's like, yeah, there is a possibility for people to do like, you know, little things and those kind of things. The reason it's called rioting because it's something different with a fair demonstration, right? So they're all already explaining about like, you know, they are probably the OG forgot to explain, like, is it justice to do this or those kind of things? Because this is they're only talking in the mirror of the prosecutors or the rioters or itself, right? Riot is about a whole community, right? There are many impacts that you should bring, right? How do you think that these people are irrational? Like all respond with like, you know, because they can vote and those kind of things because they are rational and those kind of things. There is a possibility for those kind of things. We think that this is not this is not a very good analysis in the beginning, right? So what is our parameter under closing opposition? We think that we're gonna go hard on this. Like, firstly, if you do this, you're gonna get punishment. We're not talking about kids because, of course, we're not talking about minor. Of course, if you're a minor, in the status quo, minor don't vote and don't ties to political things. And here, I'm like, you know, we are minors. We're arguing about stranger things or those kind of things. We don't argue about politicians and those kind of things. But second, we're going to punish politicians as well if that's what CEO want and those kind of things. If in certain parameter, if the politician is actually committing any violation in the public statement or those kind of things, right? So okay, go on to my some rebuttals. CEO saying the politician point this is a way to point finger to politician as well, right? The question is, what are you going to do if the case is like this? Let's say, because not every politician comment is actually has hate speech and those kind of things, right? Sometimes they can only say, let's say Jokowi say the election is unfair, right? But that question is instead, if you're a radical, you will probably go in order to do right things. But if you go to courts and trying to, we're gonna punish Jokowi for saying the election is unfair, right? probably if you go to court, there is no violation in that sentence because like there is no certain certain request for the rioters in order to go to Istana Negara to rioting or those kind of things, right? We say we like, you know, we say we educate everyone that is rioting is not like like this is educating. We're going to educate the rioters that rioting is not okay. We will in our argument we will propose to you some two things, but first I'm going to explain why giving mitigation is unjustified. But second, I will also explain why this can actually give politicians to be aware in using public statement and those kind of things, right? So firstly, why before that, they're talking about echo chamber and those kind of things. I think even like we're not going to talk about echo chamber and those kind of things because when we talk about rioting, we talk about violence, right? Like I think if you're trapped in an echo chamber, the principle of not committing violence or looting is being taught regardless what political party you are. In school and those kind of things, you are being taught that you shouldn't do committing violation, doing vandalization, probably looting and those kind of things that happen usually in rioting, because rioting, this is not a fair protest. We call it rioting. There are bigger impact. Vandalizing public property. There is a possibility you destroy some historical or important documents in the White House or Istana Negara, or stealing things from company that can sue you instead. In the end of the day, we're talking about justice and that should be enforced. Going to my first argument, why giving mitigation unjustified? Firstly, we're talking about choice. They are adults. These are not kids. Meaning they are conscious and rational. I don't think this should be debated whether they are conscious or not, because LR explain they can vote, but this can be rebutted if the government say, but yeah, talking that people sometimes voting irrationally in a developing country because because of bribery. They don't do research in developing nations, simply the economic burden and those kind of things. But we say under our closing position, even if you are being bribery and those kind of things, if you're mitigating them, you are also letting the people to be stupid and lack of information, because the mechanism, these are poor people and those kind of things. Like you are going to mitigate them. You're not going to enforce the law. Maximizing the law, and also you are also will teach these people in order to not aware about what bad of rioting, right? We from opposition will give you a full punishment proposed under the constitution. But the parallel is basically like this. Like when someone told you to kill someone in Indonesia, or let's say you are killing someone because he's calling your mom a slut, for example, in the prosecution there is a separation judgment. Okay, the person who judged you have the possibility to be in jail, but instead that now you are committing something crime, you are the one who will be prosecuted, right? So therefore we will teach people in order to not committing rioting and those kind of things. How then it will make politicians to be aware for the supporters? I mean, even so within that the politician will be prosecuted within that, even if they do something like violation of those kind of things. There's UU ITE, and probably in other countries as well, they have like some code of conduct that you need to apply you need to follow in order to follow the code of conduct, right? To not doing violation and those kind of things, right? So therefore, we think that like there are also within the rioters, it's not they're going to rioting because of their misinformation and those kind of things. The reason they're rioting, the reason they are rioting because like this is the people who are fulfilling their anger the whole time. They're probably white radicalism or those kind of things. Therefore, there is a separation of supporters, right? Because not 100 supporters going to riot and those kind of things. There is a separation. There are not 100% rioters. 100% Donald Trump supporters going to riot, right? Because firstly, these are the one who go to riot. They're basically radical, not because they are only misinformation, but second, they are systemic. This is planned rioting, right? Since when people go to rioting alone, right? So there's no question if they were aware or not, rational or not, because this is systemic. This is something that planned, right? This is something that they go there in order that being systemic. Plan and those kind of things. This is and also rioting is not only about you, right? Talking about vandalism, blocking streets and looting. This is not only about you. It's getting affected a mass community. This is unjustified for those who are getting affected by the riot, like small businesses, probably in the street, shops there, or people who want to go to work because like you cover the streets and those kind of things. This is creating something that probably we think that a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders also. Then therefore, why the politician will be careful in public speaking? Firstly, because they are seeing his by giving full punishment, they will be aware that by doing certain things, they will actually give punishment to their supporters. But even if the politician don't get punishment, you will lose your supporters, especially if you're not responsible for them in the court and the prosecution. And therefore, we proud to oppose from the closing opposition.
Thank you, CEO, for that speech. To wrap up the government case, calling upon government with head here.
Test. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. If I have like connection problems at any point in time, please just let me know through chat. Just connection problems, and I'll definitely know. POI preference is through raising hand or through chat or turning on your camera and wave. I don't really care. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Trump told people to grab women by their kitty, and also eventually after he lost the election, he said that there was definitely fake votes and that people should triumph to the Capitol and demand for justice. Prabowo, when he lost, said something similarly that led to the 212 riots that led people storming towards Monas and causing all harms towards public facilities that are existent. These people knew exactly what they were doing. They knew the influence that they had on their followers and their loyalists and chose to do nothing from it. Yeah. And yet they still derive all the benefits. They are able to cause tangible harms toward their political opponents. They are able to establish their strength in terms of voters towards the general public, reminding them that they still have a voice, and they are just able to get away with it scot-free, despite being the first people to incite these kind of riots and incite this kind of chaos in the countries respectively, right? So I don't think that we should let them get away scot-free. The least discussed individual is the one that has the most harm and the most capacity to stop this all. That's why CG's contribution in analyzing how we can hold the politicians accountable by forcing people to testify to get mitigating factors and so on and so forth is the reason why we're going to place for it. But first of all, weighing against different teams, right? OG brings to you the arguments, and they have this deadlock with OO ongoing regarding whether or not people have the capacity to understand the influence coming from many different sides if they're not educated enough. OO says that, they have media influence and they can do research on their own, so on and so forth. We're going to go above that because regardless of the amounts of influence that individuals have, I think ultimately influence should be given responsibly, right? So any other individual who gives this kind of influence irresponsibly, who tells hoaxes to get to where they are, who uses hateful words and incites people to do rage towards other people irresponsibly, should be held accountable regardless, right? By the simple fact of that, I think it's enough for us to have this mitigating factor and so on and so forth. So we go above the debate of whether or not the people have the capacity to understand, but regardless, because these people have already received that, one, they should get away with it with less punishment, but two, we can use this mitigating factor to hold the actual responsible people accountable and punish them. We now have testifies, we now have people who are willing to testify against them and so on and so forth, right? But continuing then, right, responding to OO's case. OO tries to tell you that, look, you have several metrics to fulfill to become a mitigating factor. And one of them is if you don't do this, then you're going to die, right? This is just factually untrue because it also happens if you have less capacity over your own actions and decisions, right? Because poverty is something that we debate as a mitigating factor, but on the ground is not a mitigating factor. What is mitigating factors? For example, let's take an example in Indonesia, right? Mitigating factors are such as people being underage, therefore the responsible actor is their parents. People who are disabled to the point where they cannot work by themselves, therefore they have individuals who are responsible to them referred as pengampu. Or three, people who are under orders of their direct supervisors at work, right? That is to say, people in the military who have to follow their direct generals or chief up against them, right? That means that this is directly parallel with the correlation that politicians and citizens commonly have, because citizens trust their politicians with a lot of things. For example, one, the allocation of public funds. Two, drafting regulations that's able to create a better community. But three, making clear public statements to inform people of things that is ongoing and so on and so forth, right? Understanding these, then I think you can hold people accountable for what you can hold politicians accountable for what the people do, because they are directly under this influence. This is the factual part. But then how do they try to continue from this point on, right? They are saying that, okay, because these people have a lot of influence, then ultimately it's okay if we just punish them because they couldn't discern between different medias. Inherently, influence must be done responsibly. So by the simple fact that they were not being responsible with the influence that they have over the people, it's okay to prosecute them. But second, politicians have structurally empowered, are structurally empowered to voice their views, right? One, they have more authority and gravity. We always associate governmental institutions with things like dignity, with things like respect. We must speak honorably in front of them. If we want to go to your local office, you have to wear like a shirt and you have to wear like common shoes. You're not allowed to wear sandals. So people are more reluctant to speak up against them. Second, they have media airtime. And three, they are under oath and scrutiny, right? That means that and fourth, they also have direct supervision over the actions of their followers, right? Probably people are going to report them, hey, to defend your honor, we're going to go riot at the Capitol at this date, at this time, right? And we're just going to honor you and we're just going to do this for you. There's going to be like movements on like social media. This is definitely something that they knew, but they let happen regardless, right? So under this idea then, regardless of whether or not there's many influence, politicians are still complicit in all of the harms, and therefore using this method, we're able to hold them accountable. But sure,
By this logic that you want to prosecute politicians, Bernie Sanders and AOC publicly stated that we should make the top 1% pay. And if poor person physically attacks rich person because of his statement, would CG prosecute AOC and Bernie Sanders?
By all means, we're happy to do so if we manage to prove that they have direct ties in trying to encourage the people to do so, right? So we're completely fine with that. We think that all kinds of methods and all kinds of vague wording that directly causes harms to the people is something that should be punished at the end of the day. But furthermore, right, if they want to talk about deterrence, right, because they're afraid that these people are going to do it again, we think that minimal amount of punishment is still enough because it still leaves them with two things. One, there's a permanent criminal record on their statement by saying that, oh, they were involved inside of the riots and they were involved in political uprisings. But second, these people are commonly detached from reality. These are people who do not know. So by the simple virtue of you bringing them to court and having them becoming the chain thing, and that's going to be a wake-up call from them and make them realize enough that they should get their shit together and so on and so forth. So I don't think OO case can run like that, right? But CO then. CO mostly has a shared case with OO, so I don't think they can proceed anyway, but responding to like something they try to do differently, right? Is by pointing out, we're just letting people be stupid if we continue to let this happen. We think that letting people be stupid is a very responsible thing to say, like if you were asked the government here, because the people not having enough capacity to understand is a structural failure should be attributed to the government properly. It's probably happening because there's one, bad check and balance with the media that allows hoaxes and so on and so forth. Second, there's bad education policy. So people do not have the critical thinking skills to discern different sources and which one is probably official and can be trusted, right? But three, there is inefficient law enforcement, right? Instead of focusing on sending cops to the schools where you're trying to gentrify the area, maybe you should have focused those cops on like more governmental structures and important buildings, right? For these reasons, oppose.
Thank you for that speech. To wrap up the case of this debate, calling upon the whip of opposition here.
Hi, am I audible? I just want to check whether my voice is
Yes, you're
clear.
audible. You're audible.
My PO preference is please POI directly because I'm not going to respond any POI via chat. My gender pronouns is him.
Wait. Your voice is a bit cutting, like it's stuttering. Or is it just me?
Probably my connection. How about now?
Try reading the motion. Hello?
Sorry. During the prosecution of rioters, this house would recognize being influenced by politicians.
Wait. Okay, that's good. Tadi cuma ngetes doang. Timernya nggak usah di start. That's already good. Okay.
I'm going to start my speech at 3, 2, 1. Judges, I'm going to split my argument into 4 sections. First, I'm going to respond to the I'm going to respond to the whole opening debate. Secondly, I'm going to respond to the OG. Thirdly, I'm going to respond to CJ, and lastly, I'm going to glorify why we should win this debate and why we are better, why, and trying to distinguish us with OO. First of all, like I want to respond to OG. I think like I want to respond to the whole opening debate. I think they're missing something in their debating where they are just talking, mostly they're debating about whether the rioters have enough access in order to like get like a good resource of information in order to make a rational decision at the end of the day. But I think they're missing something in here. They don't really explain what are the interests of these rioters and what also like the interests of the politician itself. I'm going to explain this, and this is also already been stated in my member of oppositions, but I'm going to like clarify it more in my speech. I'm going to respond to OG in order to do this. Firstly, I think like the problem is not just like the rioters doesn't get enough information, but the characteristic of themselves is also like they are white supremacists. This kind of people are really hate the rifle of like for example like the rifle of Donald Trump itself. Like Biden has make America are more progressive. His cabinet is very diverse. Like many people are coming from like black people, Muslim, and Native Americans. Slowly make the white people become more and more irrelevant in the US. This is create insecurity among the community. Yes, we agree that they probably underprivileged, but they also like this kind of people who hate that racist, who hate other people that are not them. They feel more they feel more like better than other race. That's why they also like, oh, if I do this, there is no like the justice system will eventually like protect me anyway because I have the white privilege. I think like also like secondly, it's not really fair to just like to put this blame fully on the politician, because I think like most of the time in this debate, people's the other team talking about how strong the politician influence these rioters, but these rioters also has influence to the politician itself. We know that politician is a populist. They only do things as what the voters are willing them to do. In order to win the elections, they need to be strategic. They have to brand themselves and have a program that is opposite of the rifle program where they support this white supremacy. So what's the agenda of this white supremacists is bring by the Trump itself. So most of the time, like the politician decision is also influenced by this kind of community. So it's not fair to just fully put this blame on the politician, because at the end of the day, like yes, they are the one who make decision, but the one who like pushing them to this politician to make decision is their voters in the first place. Lastly, there are this there's so many alternatives, like probably already mentioned this, but also like there is a constitutional court like Mahkamah Konstitusi. Like if you think that the voting is not going to work anyway, like if you find there's any cheat of the right of your rifle of the candidate, you should just report this kind of like to the Mahkamah Konstitusi. Secondly, I'm going to respond to CJ. I think like it's very absurd to say that they don't know about the law in the US. That's why like they did it anyway. They don't know the consequence. It tells you that these kind of people are not a good citizen of US, because they don't like, they grow up in that kind of country. They don't know the alternative of like they just like simply reckless take this action to riot and do vandalism, anarchism, and all that horrible stuff, like even cause someone to death. Like you don't know this kind of like the law that implemented in your country. Like it tells you that you are not a good citizen. And I think like it's justified them to get a higher punishment because they like I told you, like they are not a good citizen. I think like also like to trying to like just put this the blame in the politicians just because they are elite, they are privileged, they have power and stuff like that. It's not fair. It's not the point, the principle of the law itself. Like you should give people who have more power more punishment. It's not fair. It's not justice because there is not any principle in law like that said that, oh, you should give any punishment based on their background. That's very absurd, ladies and gentlemen. And also like and stated that the most of the rioters are coming from the children and army who is forced to like do the things that they do in 6 January incident. But that's not the majority of the rioters' characteristic. Most of them are adults, someone who is aware about what they're doing, and there are nobody forced them to do so. They just read some like tweets on the Twitter and just like decide to like go and riots and create this chaos in the United States. I think like what distinguishes us and why we should better why we are better and should win this debate. I think like we bring about the interest of politician here. We talk about this and nobody ever bring this in the whole argument. We also describe to you that people who rioting is not fully innocent, that they are a bunch of racists who is desperate. They think like they will lose their privilege. That's why by justifying their action, you are justifying people committing crime if they are desperate. You are also like supporting corrupt law justice system in the US where like let's be honest, like if this happen in the opposite side, like if minority do this kind of action, there is no any mechanism that will eventually like lesser their punishment. That's why we are very proud to oppose this motion.
Okay, thank you for that speech. I think that wraps up the debate. Recordingnya bisa